So I'm doing these character breakdowns and noting the major patterns. And with the Trump character, his predictive programming counterparts foreshadow 9/11 and an assassination attempt. And when I say foreshadow, I'm meaning that these characters represented these things, these events, before the events happened. And there's a few outliers here, but generally, there's the tendency for these characters, I mean, the common denominator that they will all reference 9/11 or an assassination attempt. And then on a third point, there's a consistent antagonist. And the antagonist, in fact, I need to add Betty Pearson from Fallout because she fits a certain pattern. So what you're looking at, let's just go through this list, and then if I'm missing anything, let me know. Uh, Now, track down 1958 references a wall and the arrest, build the wall, and also the cosmic threat, which ties into the idea of Space Force. But generally, they're all tied to 9/11 and the assassination thing. But track down is kind of an outlier, but it's the earliest example, and it does, in fact, foreshadow quite a lot of his story and his presidency, things that didn't happen until he was in office. Back to the Future references 9/11, a lot of 9/11 predictive programming in that one, and it also connects to time travel. Quantum Leap, he's in an episode of Quantum Leap that's actually dated the day after Trackdown's episode in 1959, End of the World, aired, which is kind of interesting. But he shows up in a taxi cab with his father, and he'd be appropriately aged, he's like 12 years old. So it's an episode that takes place in 1958, Quantum Leap. Now, those are the sort of the ones that are sort of outliers. But anyway, Quantum Leap, and there's mixed ones. Like, for example, Donnie Darko um, addresses both time travel and 9/11. Super Mario, King Koopa is based on Trump. The Twin Towers get dissolved. And Dennis Hopper, interestingly, was died on JFK's birthday. There's some birthday connections that are interesting when you get into these various assassins, like John Hinckley having JFK's birthday. It gets really deep, but I'm just scratching the surface here. Now, Machete, 2010. This had Senator McLaughlin foreshadowing as a Trump-like character with his anti-immigrant rhetoric at the time of the shooting. That's directly tied to Butler. In fact, on the day of Butler, many people rushed to Machete on YouTube to comment on it. So Donnie Darko, yeah, 9/11 references, time travel, and interestingly, and this is sort of it actually does foreshadow the Trump presidency in a lot of ways, even the Q stuff, the Pizzagate stuff, and even Biden's reference in it. So that's kind of a special case. And Leave the World Behind kind of brought back Donnie Darko elements that we could get into later. Gremlins 2, the guy that owns the burning building is being interviewed, and they put two mics in his face, a 9 and 11. He's talking about the burning towers. So there you have this Trump character, and I think his name is Crump. But Crump is like based on Trump, Gremlins 2, tied to 9/11. The Boys, HBO series, season 4, season finale, Assassination Run. They had to change the title, and some of the marketing around it because of the way that it perfectly mirrored what just happened to Trump. So this was like aired right after. So that's an assassination connection. A Man in Full, based on a Tom Wolfe novel from like 1999 or maybe even 89. I mean, it's not a new book, but the movie about it, they made it about Trump. And it's not specifically assassination, but his death is engineered by an antagonist. And the antagonist is a black mayor from Chicago, which I think is you'll see it's a pattern. Okay, Civil War. Civil War, he gets killed. That's the one that was directed by the guy who wrote 28 Days Later. And in that one, he's specifically killed. The antagonist in that one is a black woman. So Trump gets killed by a black woman in Civil War. And this is important, as you'll see. In Fallout, you have foreshadowing of the assassination, as we talked about, blood on the right side of the head. We were talking about this in April, months before the event. And that was arranged by, the massacre that resulted in the blood on his head was arranged by Betty Pearson. So the antagonist is Betty Pearson, who is a black woman. Again, We're talking about the Trump character and his antagonist. Might as well jump to Wizard of Oz really quick. In Wizard of Oz, his antagonist, and again, he represents Trump. The Wicked Witch represents Antifa. She's the one calling him out. She's the antagonist. Again, a black woman. Mickey 17, Trump S character, survives an assassination. Blood on the side of his face, poses for cameras. Beetlejuice, Trump in a gold suit with the American flag, the lapel pin, is in the netherworld. That aired right after the assassination, or the attempt from Butler. So again, Beetlejuice has that timing connection with the Trump in the underworld. Megalopolis, Trump as Caesar Catalina. Not only does he survive an assassination attempt, but it has a 9/11 connection, deep 9/11 connections. Francis Ford Coppola actually delayed the film because of 9/11, since it involved the destruction of New York from a falling Russian satellite. Which, by the way, today, 3/11, there's supposed to be something like a satellite hitting the Earth. But Megalopolis has the 9/11 theme. They even have footage from 9/11, 2001, in one of the montages near the end. So you have, again, 9/11 assassination with a Trump-like character. And his antagonist in Megalopolis is the mayor. So the mayor, played by Giancarlo Esposito. Then you have, I didn't put it here, Civil War, Captain America. So in Captain America, the trailer aired on 7/12, and it had the president at the podium getting shot at. So again, Civil War, and then he's the Red Hulk, which I think is code for extremist MAGA. But again, assassination theme, he survives. And his antagonist is Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito. In Man in Full, it's the mayor. In Megalopolis, it's the mayor. So I'm just pointing out there's some commonalities with the antagonists that are behind the downfall of the Trump-esque character. And you can see how this is identity politics, and there's some significance to it because you're talking about the class war struggle, class war as being sort of the framework here, where Trump epitomizes unfettered fascism, capitalism, whereas in The Wizard of Oz in particular, if you haven't seen it, Trump is the Wizard of Oz. It's super obvious. And he has total control of the population. The people of Oz are brainwashed, and he admits it to the witch that they're brainwashed. They can't see through the history, which is a bunch of lies. But she stands in for Antifa, and if you've seen part 2, For Good, they may as well have called it Wicked for Renee Good, because she's Antifa fighting against the deportation efforts of the Wizard of Oz, trying to kick all the talking animals out of town. All right, let's see what else. The Wall comic, which we talked about recently, has this Trump building the wall, and he's like this fascist dictator. That just kind of stood out to me as interesting, considering Trackdown had the wall thing built into it. So in my common denominators between this sample of predictive programming examples of Trump, common denominators are assassination, 9/11, and the antagonist being somebody representing the far left, and it's even kind of racial in the sense that it's a black woman, black man, in almost every instance orchestrating his downfall. And then you have the time travel theme, which is, again, Back to the Future, Quantum Leap, Donnie Darko. And this kind of ties into the whole Baron Trump time traveler series of books that I think might be fake and backdated, but I'm not sure. So anyway, if you can think of any others that I've missed, we're talking about characters in movies that represent Trump, often openly, his predictive programming counterparts, and I want to find the ones that I've missed, because they all seem to either foreshadow 9/11 or an assassination attempt, or if they don't do that, and there's a few outliers, they still reinforce the idea of the wall, the arrest, and the racial component to his presidency, this Trump versus Obama dialectic. Like, I would say that the Giancarlo Esposito actor who portrays the mayor in Megalopolis, who portrays Sidewinder, who's also, oh, I didn't get this one, in The Boys, he orchestrates the assassination attempt on the Homelander who represents Trump, and the actor who plays Edgar, his antagonist, same guy, Janine Carlo Esposito. So what are you looking at here? You're looking at evidence that the fake events are totally encoded into all of our mainstream entertainment, so we're told the stories in advance in many different formats. And this contradicts the idea that it's random coincidence because there are too many common denominators, meaning these are too consistent to be mere coincidence. There's some intentionality here and specificity when you get into the gender and race and the identity politics elements to it. So I'm going to run down the list really quick. If I miss anything, let me know. Track Down, Back to the Future, Quantum Leap, Super Mario Brothers, Machete, Donnie Darko, Gremlins 2, The Boys, Man in Full, Civil War, Fallout, Beetlejuice, Mickey 17, Wizard of Oz, Megalopolis, and Civil War. What other Trumps have I missed? And of course, he has a wide array of media appearances. He's a very well known figure outside of this, but I'm just pointing out the specific roles that contain predictive content, prophetic movies. Not literally, but you know what I mean, as far as the movies he's participated in, or not him, but proxies for him, which connect him with these things. So he's been connected, his character's been connected to 9/11 long before it happened. His representatives in fiction have been connected to an assassination attempt at the behands at the with the plotting of his antagonist here, the Obama character. Like that's been built into this story. And the Trump Obama thing goes back to the birther movement. But the way I describe it, there's a dialectic here. Trump represents 1776, which is a worldview thing, and Obama would be 1619. And I can break that down, how it corresponds to the class struggle and this left-right tug of war, but these are two key players in this. And when I say players, it's like Erica Kirk and Candace Owens. You know, these are people who are playing roles. These roles are meant to be perceived the way that we are seeing people respond to them. Why do you think people have Trump derangement syndrome? Decades of conditioning that this dictator was coming. Decades that this person, this tyrant would show up, and you're supposed to identify with the people who go after him. I mean, for example, in The Boys, the Homelander, the Trump guy, is the bad guy. Crump is obviously kind of scummy in Gremlins. You can't say King Koopa is the good guy. Biff Tannen, not a good guy. Trackdown, he's a con man. They arrest him. Wizard of Oz is a fascist. The guy in Mickey 17 is a fascist trying to create an all-white colony on a planet. In Civil War, there's a reason why they want to kill him. In Megalopolis, I don't know. I mean, he's definitely this Trump character. I'll have to revisit that one. Man in Full, they represent him as Trump as this uh, corrupt real estate mogul who probably deserved it. And Machete, obviously, he was a racist, ranting about immigrants at the moment he was shot at, just like Trump was. So, in other words, all these representations of them have been bad. The Trump characters have been bad in all of these. Frank Mir says the dead zone. Is Trump in the dead zone? I will take note. But we're doing similar breakdowns for all the different characters and concentrating on the things that connect them all in the predictive programming and the common elements. And the ones with the like Betty Pearson, the mayors, the black soldier who shoots him in Civil War, and the wizard, the wicked witch. This was something I only picked up on recently. That in all of these movies, there's a consistent antagonist, and the antagonist is a Antifa stand-in or far leftist stand-in, and the opposite of a powerful, rich white male. So a black woman kind of encapsulates that, and the Wicked Witch representing Antifa, defending the animals. And the 1619 correlates to this concept that America actually began in 1619. And by saying 1776, you're effacing the history of black Americans because the transatlantic slave trade kicks off in 1619. And this was encoded into Obama's movie Leave the World Behind, with the White Lion ship, which was the first one that brought uh, kidnapped, enslaved individuals, and it was in 1619. And they had 1619 as the emergency signal. The boat hitting the shore was symbolic of America's 1776 version, um, having a reckoning with its past. And so this is all, again, class warfare, critical race theory stuff encoded into the politics. 1776 was flashing all around January 6th, so it represented this far right MAGA idea that MAGA is fighting for its existence because America's changing, because the progressives are rewriting our history. It's all really consistent, though. Ryler says, "Did you hear about the Cosby Show changing a scene on the stream version?" I have not. I'm assuming they're going to remove any scenes where Bill Cosby's giving anybody, pudding or popsicles or any sort of a drink. What a horrible way to destroy his legacy. Greg Stilson as a politician that Christopher Walker tries to assassinate. Okay, I'll check that out. The politician is played by Martin Sheen. Okay, now that's interesting. Because we talked about Charlie Sheen in the connection to the Charlie Kirk event and the timing of the conversation they had. And isn't there some connection between the Sheens, Martin Sheen, and the Bohemian Grove? I got to dig into that. Anyway, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments below. I know this looks like chaos, but it's actually not. We're actually revealing that there's order in the chaos. And I'm going to do a whiteboard video specifically on Trump. I'll follow it up with Musk. And if there are any other significant world stage characters that you think need to be broken down because of their pre-existence in the realm of predictive programming in entertainment, I'm definitely interested, because my contention here is that fake events require fake people, and therefore you're going to find these people foreshadowed and inserted into our minds at the same time that the future events are. And that's why we have all these, we have like the Charlie Kirkland getting killed in that movie. And so the interpretation of this stuff by truthers is like they have to tell us what they're going to do. And they get all mysterious about it. And it's like, no, they don't. That's not what's happening. They're conditioning you for what's coming. So when they simulate this historic event, you just accept it as inevitable. I think one of the best ones on the Charlie Kirk one is the South Park, where the person who asks him the question, it's like the same question, looks like the same person, and he gets knocked off the stool to the left. I mean, that's too perfect. And so the people say it's just a coincidence, it's just a coincidence. Just wait until you see when we put our entire deconstruction project through AI and we start analyzing the probabilities, the statistics, and we start demonstrating that no, this isn't selectivity bias, cherry picking, Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You could not construct this, because what these consistencies have in common isn't that they're drawing from the same archetype or character. It's that these things are actually content that foreshadow real world significant events, which I contend are fake. Predictive programming only ever predicts fake events. That's axiomatic. And so this is like one of the main guardrails. I call it the bloody guardrail. Predictive programming. Axiom, what number are we on? I'm just going to put 58 as a placeholder. Predictive programming only ever foreshadows fake events. If you can't get that past the filter, if you can't get this to override their programming, you're not going to get out of the world stage. Because what I'm trying to point out here is what this real correlation isn't that movies predict events. It's that the movies are used as propaganda vectors to plant the seeds, to frame your reference point, so that when they fake the event, you've already been conditioned to accept it as real. It's like advertising. And it's not even subliminal, but you could consider it a form of subliminal advertising, not for products, but for people, for events, for ideas. Hey, thank you, Tim Truth. Appreciate that. Happy 311. 311 was something that we demonstrated the efficacy of our predictive model. It was on Sunday of that week. We said World War III begins on Wednesday. Ground Zero, Seattle. I mean, that's very specific, right? Well, do you know where the pandemic started? Seattle on 311. Now, how did we know that? Because we're not psychic. We're analyzing the predictive programming and extrapolating from it future trends, future events. And in that case, we happen to pick up on a very significant date code. Because I generally don't have dates. Like, I didn't know when Trump was going to get the wound to the right side of his head. It happened on 7/13, which in retrospect, I might have been able to have drawn that out. But generally, we don't have dates, although we do see trends and we do see alignments. But the 311 thing was a big one, and it's not over yet. I don't think it's over yet for Seattle. Plain Dakota says, I wonder what you would find if you went back and watched The Apprentice. You know, I've been thinking about that. So The Apprentice is what they call the newly initiated Mason. They go apprentice, and they go through a middle degree, which is the fellowcraft, and then they become Master Mason. And to become Master Mason, they have to do the whole death and resurrection. So I don't know if this is what's saying or if Butler is already it. I kind of don't know. Ryler says, did you hear about the band called World Trade Center that released an album September 2001? No, the 11th song is called September. No, if you can put a link. So how do you explain this? Because I have an explanation. The script for every event, which we can call a playbook, pre-exists the fake event and all predictive programming. This is another axiom. So number 59. So in other words, all of the predictive programming content that you see and the common denominators reveals it has a common source. You could call that source the playbook for the event. Like there was a playbook for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And based on the predictive programming release dates, you could surmise that this event was scheduled as far back as 1998, likely a couple years before. So the playbook for the event that contained all the key elements existed in 96. That's what was circulated to the Snake Eyes director. That's what was circulated to the Tempest, to heads of state. This is what was being passed around, with the common denominators being the elements that are specifically to be highlighted. We need the name Tyler. We need the execution theme. Have some guy with the variant of the name Charlie Kirk getting shot on the left side of the neck. I mean, it's not hard to imagine how they pull this off. And so the playbook for 9/11 was obviously widely distributed across many different platforms, and people wouldn't have to know what the man in black in their production studio means when he tells them, yeah, we need you to include something about 9/11, planes hitting buildings. You wouldn't have to know. The seed, the source is what is being distributed to these various platforms in a very compartmentalized manner.
Hello, Moto.
Are we still live, or did the phone call cut us off? I'll wait just a minute here. Ryler says 137 is the 33rd prime. Interesting. Okay, are we still live? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm a night stalker. Starting tomorrow morning, I go through training, but I thought I was going to work in a deli, but instead I'm going to be stalking the aisles at night and leaving by the time the customers get there at a grocery store. It's good pay, good hour, and I can write during my break times, but more importantly, I will just be a couple of months away now from getting into an office space. And also, I really want to get the PSYOP trading cards and the tabloid back into circulation, the Insider. And I've run the numbers on it, and it's totally doable, as in it could be a monthly publication with only as few as 50 consistent subscribers, and that's not hard to get. And the new issues will be better, superior to the previous ones. I have a better template, better art now. We have AI stuff. So I'm just going to be focusing on scaling up the operation by getting all the publishing back into place. And I also want to promote the book. And the reason why I'm doing all these mind maps is we're building up what I'm calling the Great Deconstruction Project. And this project will be publicly accessible. It's going to have its own website. And it's essentially going to serve the role like a Wikipedia for fake events and fake people. And it's going to correlate fake events with the entertainment programming that reinforces it. So we're kind of exposing how the PSYOP entertainment complex actually exists. Military industrial complex isn't the thing. You should be paying attention to the PSYOP entertainment complex. Entertainment bred in circuses as a weapon of war. As the principal tool, this is Sun Tzu's Art of War. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemies without fighting. Ryler says, I noticed 9/11 predicted programming in the first 5 episodes of 1987 Ninja Turtles concerning the World Trade Center and collapsed buildings. Okay, 87, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When I was a film studies major, I was getting into animation, and I actually talked with a couple writers for the animation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a few other shows, and they sort of just blatantly told me that they were communists. Like they were proud of it. And they were saying, though, that I should pay attention to how all the children's shows turn CEOs into villains. And all the villains seemingly just want to pollute the environment. I think they also worked on Captain Planet. But the message there, it's all class warfare. The subway, underground, the underclass, the ones who have to deal with the radioactive filth and the waste of the rich. It was all climate change programming hitting the children. So we've got regular propaganda in prime time. You have subliminal stuff operating on a whole different level. And what we're pointing out here is that the predictive and concurrent programming reveals a direct relationship between psychological operations and entertainment. But yeah, thanks for the tip there. Again, I'm looking for. I'm going to do a 9/11 one separately. Right now, I want to again gather all of the Trump characters in movies, and oftentimes you'll find the writers and directors will admit, "Oh yeah, King Kupo is based on Trump. Oh yeah, Biff Tannen based on Trump. Homelander based on Trump." The next season of The Boys, the Homelander is shown in the White House. I mean, that's how blatant it is. And he's meant to be reviled and hated. He's a horrible person, but he's meant to be Trump. So it's not even that subliminal or covert. It's pretty blatant. Capture the Loop says maybe Netflix doesn't have commercials because it's operated by the CIA. I would say that's accurate. No other platform has been a more consistent conduit for predictive programming than Netflix, which is why I have dubbed this Planet Netflix. The world stage can be referred to as Planet Netflix. I used to say this jokingly at first. I was like, hey, if you missed the news, just watch Netflix. It'll catch you up. But now it's like, no, Netflix is it's like a scrying mirror. If you want to know what's happening in the future, watch Netflix. And it's absolutely true because what they're putting into the minds of the masses is what the public is being set up to believe when they fake it. In other words, you can look at your big screen TV with Netflix on as the Overton window. And if it shows up on Netflix, hey, it's going to be in the realm of believability from the perspective of the entertainment and news consumers who are being targeted with this messaging. So if they put it on Netflix, you're probably going to see it in the real world. And I say real in quotes. Nobody's objective enough to be in the real world unless they're totally unplugged from all media. And even then, that's not enough. I have to correct myself there. because that doesn't even do it anymore. The best you can be is under misinformed. Not paying attention doesn't pull you closer to the truth because your indoctrination would have already set the stage for you. Because someone had said, are Amish off world stage? I'm like, no, they're under misinformed. You think they're outside the dominant paradigm? No, they have different values, but they're still in the same fictional universe. That doesn't change. So tuning out is not the answer. I mean, you can tune out once you get the upgrade. So if you arrive at the off-world stage, of course, the TSA may pat you down to make sure you don't have any gematria calculators. But once you make it to the off-world stage and you see it for what it is, you see the program, you can delineate between the two, and you recognize history bending and news bending, and the different point of view that it creates in those who are operating within that closed informational system. Once you see it, yeah, you can tune out because now you're informed. So it's better to be informed than under misinformed, because the under misinformed don't exactly know what they have wrong. And it matters. And it matters because for some reason, or we know why, because of its ubiquitous, ever-present nature, media has in fact become a dominant influence in shaping mankind's worldview, supplanting that of religion, tradition, and everything else. There's this monolithic or monoculture. There's this new monotheism in town. It's replaced all the religions, and it's basically your TV screen, the altar to the Saturnian matrix, the material realm. And it really is very much like the TV is in fact more or less an altar, and news is the news testament. Because entertainment has been hijacked for worldview control. And I think what they've done is they've just basically perfected what religions have always attempted. The handbook for the recently deprogrammed is available on Amazon right now as paperback because I really want to emphasize it being paperback. It's easy for ebooks to get deleted by an EMP, and I want to get into the meat verse. But the reason for these breakdowns and this great deconstruction project is that we're going to onboard more people to this perspective, which will need a lot of explaining, which is why I'm doing the whiteboards. But I think the handbook is really the way to go because it really does break down all the concepts that we've been developing since the channel started. And if you recognize that there's media fakery and that people aren't really dying, then you must also recognize that nobody agrees with you if they have a big platform. That this perspective has no representation in alt media. And none of the influencers will touch it. It's like radioactive to them. Why is that? So it's a dead giveaway that you're dealing with plants, with operatives, with guard railers, as I call them. And so the bigger the off-world stage perspective gets, the easier it will be to expose the guard railers because of their intransigence. If they're still clinging to the old operating system, they're defending establishment media infrastructure. They're traitors to self. And I don't plan to try to convert them because that's their paycheck. But I do think by pointing this out, any among their subscribers who see the fakery and how it's not properly analyzed will recognize, okay, we're in a cul-de-sac. We're in a sheep pen. Where do we go from here? And the off-world stage is the place. We'll be live this evening to take calls. In fact, I think my IPS hat might be in today. Maybe I can wear it at work.